What it do, cucksters? It's your boy the Hater, and it's time for a late night SmackDown review. That's right, the Hater watched the show a little late, so therefore the review is a little late. But I did watch all of it, so let's get to it, all right? The theme of this episode is that it sucked ass, all right? Now, the show starts out with people coming into the arena. I don't like this, but this is here to stay, it turns out. So we're just going to go with it, you know what I mean? The first segment, because we're going to go over this segment by segment, you know what I mean? The first segment is an in-ring segment, and it's the Samoans. They don't have a name yet, because they used to be the Bloodline, but they're not anymore. So it's basically Jacob Fatu, Solo Sikoa, and of course, the now signed Jeff Cobb, who now goes by JC Mateo, which is not a terrible name, but more on him later, you know what I'm saying? Basically, for some reason, you know, Jacob Fatu is over. It's really odd, right? It's basically the announcers saying how great he is, despite the evidence not showing it, right? There is no reason why he would be over, but Solo Sikoa wouldn't be, right? The only difference is that when Solo Sikoa wrestles, they just talk about how he's a complete nobody that stole the Ula Fala from Roman Reigns. When Jacob Fatu wrestles, you'd think it's Andre the Giant, you know what I mean? So that did its job, I guess. He's massively over. Solo Sikoa tries to, I guess, undermine him by doing his catchphrases. Then he interrupts him while he's doing his shit catchphrases. And he says, yeah, know what I mean? And he says, we all know what you mean, but remember when you used to say you love me? And then this becomes even worse than, one could have imagined. At this point, Jacob Fatu says, I love you, Solo. But he doesn't say it with the gusto and the panache that we're used to. He doesn't say it like a retard, basically, right? So Solo Sikoa says, hey, you used to say this like you're retarded. Why aren't you saying it like that anymore? Which is a valid question, because for some reason, Jacob Fatu is acting like a little bitch, right? He's acting all displeased. Solo Sikoa hasn't done anything to him except help him win matches that he was going to lose. LA Knight had him beat, basically, right? And then Solo Sikoa moved Jacob Fatu off the announce table, and JC Mateo attacked LA Knight, helping them win. You know what I mean? At this point, motherfucks, thankfully, the megastar's hit music hits, right? But instead of coming out normally, LA Knight comes out from behind and attacks JC Mateo and runs away. Now, when he attacks JC Mateo, who I personally believe JC Mateo is a believable guy because he's fat, right? But he's like a stocky kind of fat. He's like Rhino. Remember Rhino? He looks just like him, except he's not white, right? Like, I think that if I had to pick somebody to win in a fight, taking away like the Brock Lesnars, who would obviously beat probably everybody, the Kurt Angles, the Lashleys, and the Canes, these are the people that and Mark Henry, the people that I think would like destroy basically everybody, and the Big Show, I should say, right? Like, taking away those people, I would probably pick Rhino to win in a fight against almost everybody else. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Rhino would destroy Stone Cold and The Rock, right? And I have a similar view of JC Mateo, who is like a Rhino, but smaller, stockier, less muscular, less strong, less explosive. He's like an inferior Rhino, But he is believable, right? It is believable that this guy, just based on the size of his fucking head, that this guy can take a hit and this guy's not going down easy. However, on the other side, we have LA Knight, who is built like a god, is taller, better looking, you know what I mean? He's an actual star, right? And before everyone starts losing their fucking minds, oh, the Samoans are from Pensacola. Yeah, they're a bunch of pussies from Pensacola. I never heard of a tough guy out of Pensacola. However, LA Knight is from Hagerstown, Maryland. And if you've ever had the misfortune of finding yourself in Hagerstown, Maryland, then you'll know that people in Hagerstown, Maryland are not to be fucked with. You know what I'm saying? That place is like a channel of drug trade. So if you grew up in Hagerstown, you're probably not a pussy. Shout out to the ones that have been to Hagerstown. Anyways, after this, the segment mercifully ends, which is kind of nice. Then we get Michin and B-Fab, I almost forgot her name, and they're saying nonsense. B-Fab is like, what would look good with your money in the bank? The tag team titles. And it's like, Michin sucks. I mean, like, she's okay as a wrestler, but in kayfabe, she sucks. B-Fab is one of the worst wrestlers of all time in kayfabe. She's never won anything, yet she has aspirations to, like, get the tag team titles. She should have aspirations to make the next roster cut, which she probably won't, given the fact that she's probably next to be cut. At this point, Chelsea Green and her entourage come out, and she says she's gonna win the Money in the Bank. Alexa Bliss just appears out of nowhere. She says, good luck out there, and the match is next, right? The match ends with Alexa Bliss hitting what they call now the Sister Abigail DDT, also known as the Compass Rose. She hits that move. I forget who she hits it on, and she wins, right? So obviously, she's in the Money in the Bank. That makes sense to me. It makes much more sense, in my personal opinion, than it would for Michin or Chelsea Green to be in the match, because they're firm mid-carders, right, in the women's division. So, like, when it's time to elevate them to the main event, they can go in there and they can win. But for now, it's Alexa Bliss's turn. After this, we have a match between Fraxium and DIY. If someone were to ask you, hey, name one match that is completely meaningless, this would be a good answer to that question, because nobody could possibly give a rat's ass, right? DIY lose after Axiom pins one of them. I think he pins Gargano with like a Rana pin, basically, right? He just sits on him and pins his ass. But afterwards, DIY attacks him, right? Motor City Machine Guns come out and make the save with their double team moves. It is what it is. Like, I mean, this is not entertaining, because this match, any permutation of this could have happened, right? Like, if you took out Fraxium and put Motor City Machine Guns in their spot and had Fraxium save them, it's like the segment would be exactly the same. Nothing would change next week or beyond. So there you have it. After this, Fraxium and Street Profits have an interaction backstage. The Street Profits are like twice the size of these guys. Like, Montez Ford is twice the size of these guys. So Angelo Dawkins is like 3 times the size. It is just a ridiculous presupposition that these tag teams should be in the same like category, right? Like, Fraxium are, your typical, I'm going to say modern, tag team. And Street Profits are your modern, like, never going to make it jobber in Angelo Dawkins, and not quite good enough Montez Ford. Like, Montez Ford was probably signed with at least the hope that he might one day be a single star. Clearly, that's not happening. So it's like they're just a tag team of 2 guys that never made it. You know what I mean? You can try to repackage them 100 times, give them new music, but the facts don't change. That being said, after the Street Profits leave, this is like a pretty friendly interaction. Nathan Frazier is like overly excited, as he should be. Then we have an interview with R-Truth and Wade Barrett. R-Truth basically says, he reveals that it's going to be him versus Cena at Saturday Night Main Event, just like I thought it would be, right? Now, he says he's going to beat some sense into Cena. Obviously, what's going to happen is it's going to be a glorified squash match. Cena's going to brutalize R-Truth, right? Allowing for Cookie Rhodes to come back and make the save. That's the prediction. I don't see how it goes in any other way. Next up, we have Aleister Black. Aleister Black has been back for 1 month, according to the Mello and Miz promo that was cut before this match. It feels like he came back last week, and it's going to feel like that for the foreseeable future, because despite being here for 1 month, Aleister Black has done nothing. You know what I mean? He has done fuck all. So nobody could possibly be excited about this. He is this close to being on the ban list along with Rusev, right? 2 guys that came back, and that's it. They just came back. Nothing happened. We all know they're going to end up being jobbers. So it's like just, speed run their return to the part where they're both jobbers, right? Because that's what's going to happen. Anyways, this leads to the match of Carmelo Hayes versus Aleister Black. Aleister Black is beating Carmelo's ass thoroughly. He prepares to hit the Black Mass by picking him up with his foot. Miz attacks him, but, Miz goes for the skull-crushing finale. It gets countered into a shitty-looking Black Mass, and Carmelo just bodies Aleister Black from behind, hits the nothing but net. It looked good, and Carmelo is left standing. But who cares? Like, even if he beat him clean, which he didn't, he beat Aleister Black clean. Carmelo Hayes is another one that, like of the people that are involved in this segment, and I'll throw in Rusev there as well, The Miz is going to outlast all of them. They're all going to get fired before The Miz. You know what I mean? These are all people that are never going to make it, right? And again, I have to harken back the same way that I say Trick Williams and Oba Femi and Tony D'Angelo are never going to make it on the main roster. I remember when people would argue with me. They'd say Carmelo Hayes is going to be a future WWE champion. And I'm like, Carmelo Hayes is going to be a future like Santos Escobar. And that's exactly what's happened. He is a complete jobber that nobody cares about. He's been there for like 2 years in the main roster, at least 1 full year. And he's won like maybe 1 match that nobody cared about. So there you have it. And he's lost everything else, So with that being said, that segment ends. Praise God. Next up, we have a backstage segment. Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair are talking about nothing. Alexa Bliss says, you helped me out when I started. Charlotte Flair says, I don't care. and all of a sudden Julia appears, and Nick Aldis says that Julia is the newest member of SmackDown, like we're supposed to give a flying fuck. I don't care at all. Wasn't she already on SmackDown? I guess she was on Raw. She was somewhere. Her and the other girl that debuted, Roxanne Perez, they were involved in some sort of tag team match. I think it was on Monday, I guess. And they lost, and now she's on SmackDown like we're supposed to give a flying fuck. It is what it is. That's what happened. What do you want me to do, cooks? After this, Drew McIntyre comes out and talks about how Damian Priest is stuck in the Drew McIntyre vortex, and that's why he's relevant. The two of them will have a steel cage match, I think, next week. Should be fun. Steel cage matches are always a treat. But quite frankly, does anyone care about this? I didn't care about this at WrestleMania. Why would I care now, And Drew McIntyre almost hints at this. He's like, I beat you clean in your match in a street fight, and you keep coming back. And he's like, what the fuck is it going to take, We're going to have another brutal match. I will say this, Drew McIntyre, even though he's boring as shit, like, in terms of being in the ring, he is out there, like, straight up, like, carrying this company in terms of meaningful matches. Like, he's shortening his career with these hardcore matches, to get something out of it, but nothing comes because he's Drew McIntyre, right? That's all that happens, nothing else. As Drew McIntyre is leaving, the Samoans come out again, and he has a small stare down versus Jacob Fatu, right? Much like I said earlier about JC Mateo and LA Knight, this is the inverse of that. You see Drew McIntyre, who is an alpha human, right? He's just like on another level in terms of his physicality. And also he's a good looking guy. And he's walking past these three short, fat, ugly, like jabrones, right? And it's like, I'm supposed to believe that any of these guys have any chance against Drew McIntyre. He would completely murder all of them. Just like I said about Hagerstown, Scotland ain't to be fucked with either, But that's neither here nor there. Even if he was like a complete pussy from the most pussy-ass country or state, he's still Drew McIntyre. He's a fucking god amongst men in terms of his, like, physique, right? In terms of his power, strength, and athleticism. It's not even on the same level. And I don't like Drew McIntyre, but it's just goofy. It's just goofy to have me believe that Drew McIntyre, who if you saw this guy in real life, it would turn heads. You'd be like, who the fuck is that guy? If you saw JC Mateo, you'd be like, oh, that guy's fucking disproportionate and weirdly shaped. If you saw like Jacob Fatu, you'd be like, oh, this guy looks like he went to prison, but he doesn't look like he was like a big deal there. If you saw Sakoa, you'd be like, oh, just a regular fat guy, just another Kevin Owens. He's just like, it's basically like a group of Kevin Owenses. Then I'm supposed to believe that they have any chance against Drew McIntyre, right? And this should mean a lot because like in the past, we've had matches like Kevin Owens versus Drew McIntyre, and it's like, this is just laughable. Like Drew McIntyre would completely body Kevin Owens. It's not even close. It's not even within the realm of possibility, but enough bearing these Samoan jobbers. They come out, but LA Knight shows up. Actually, no, there was a match first, wasn't there? That's right, Cuts. Let me check my notes. Damn right. Solo Sakoa versus Big Jim, who has a Jey Uso type entrance where it starts out in the backstage and he says a bunch of horse shit. And Phoenix. Basically, the match goes as follows. Phoenix yells, "Animal!" and he gets speared. Right, then after this, shenanigans happen with the Samoans, which lead to Jimmy Uso, I should say, getting Samoan spiked on the apron. Then Rey Fenix does like a top rope type move, right? I'm yawning because I'm so bored out of this, right? And then he winds up to do a move, turns around, Solo Sikoa just grabs him, Samoan spikes him. He does, to his credit, Phoenix does like a backflip when he gets spiked to really sell it, but it's like, what was he doing? He did this offensive move, then he was like winding up for the next move, and he just got rammed. So anyways, Solo Sikoa wins. He's the first man to qualify in the Money in the Bank. Next up, well, it's part of the same segment, I suppose. All of this is kind of the same segment. LA Knight goes and attacks all of them, gets a chair. Nick Aldis comes out and says, look, if you want to get your hands so bad on JC Mateo, which I don't think is his target is Jacob Fatu. But that doesn't make sense for tonight's match. So Nick Aldis has to gaslight us and pretend like the gripe that LA Knight has is against JC Mateo. He presumably has a gripe against all three of these men, but clearly the main gripe is the guy that he had a match with. So right away we get JC Mateo versus LA Knight. You already know how this is going to end, right? Nick Aldis makes a match, right, that basically puts LA Knight in a shitty situation. Throughout the night, LA Knight has been attacking these people from behind because he doesn't have the numbers. So what does Nick Aldis do? He puts him in a one-on-one match with the two other guys right there. The match is incredibly bad. I didn't like this match at all. JC Mateo is such a boring wrestler. Everything that he did was boring as fuck. He has a good finish, because it's like a lot of people don't do like unique moves anymore. But beyond that, it's like everything else just felt slow and sluggish. LA Knight was doing some cool things as usual, right? Including like a kind of like a springboard, back, like twisting cross body to Fatu. and Solo. But after he goes in the ring, he gets the tour of the islands and he gets pinned, right? That's it. The match made no sense. Like, why is this happening? At least Nick Aldis should be like, all right, everyone else go to the back so they can have a one-on-one match. But he didn't. It was almost like a death sentence. It was like, all right, LA Knight, you're going to go there, get your ass beat. That's how it's going to be. Then we get a backstage segment. It's Santos Escobar telling Angel that it's not worth losing trust because Berto is selfish. And he basically pretends that there's any draw in being in Legado Del Fantasma, right? This is unacceptable. Legado del Fantasma is up there with Retribution as the worst faction of all time. Why would anyone want to be involved with Santos Escobar, who is a fucking loser? This guy, all he's done is lose. Like, I'll put it to you this way. His most meaningful moment was an NXT feud for the Cruiserweight title against JD McDonough, right? That's the highlight of his WWE career. This guy is like the lowest guy on the card, and he's the head of a faction. And presumably, Berto is like, wait a second, this faction sucks ass. All we do is lose. And Angel has to go convince him, hey man, come back to the faction. Why should he? He's gotten nothing out of being involved in this faction. The only thing that happens is he loses every match, and then he also gets yelled at by Santos Escobar, who loses every match. So this is just a really, really bad storyline. And in my personal opinion, literally, I'm not even exaggerating this time, I don't think one viewer gave a shit. I don't think there's one person that watched this that thought, yeah, I want to see more of like, Legado del Fantasma. Not one person thought that. Anyways, it's time for the main event. It's Tiffany Stratton versus Nia Jax. This is a SmackDown level main event, whether you like it or not. Despite the fact of there being multiple instances of women running around today, this is an acceptable main event because this is a big feud that boiled over for months. So this is fine, right? And the match had two pretty good false finishes. There's a part right after Naomi comes in to interfere, Jade Cargill comes and neutralizes her basically, right? This leads to Nia Jax doing a dumbass fat wrestler move. Like the fat wrestlers have this propensity to just run into things like retards? She does that. She just runs into the turnbuckle / the post, right? It's like you could tell from her motion that she was intending to run into it because she's not a good wrestler. Like, it's like if Edge or Rhino do it, it's going to look like part of the attempt to do like a shoulder thrust, like basically a spear or a gore into the person, right? But when Nia Jax does it, because she's not athletic enough, and neither is Tiffany Stratton compared to the male wrestlers, it looks like very uncoordinated, right? So Tiffany Stratton gets out of the way. Nia Jax can clearly stop herself by putting her arms and grabbing the corner, right? But what happens is she just keeps going anyways. So you think this is kind of over because she rolls into the ring, and Tiffany Stratton does the moonsault, right? The prettiest moonsault ever. Nia Jax kicks out though. The announcers go crazy. You'd think she just kicked out of the pedigree for the first time, But whatever. They made it into a moment. And then eventually, Nia Jax gets the upper hand. Samoan drop onto the table, throws her back into the ring, goes for the Annihilator, right? At this point, I'm thinking, all right, Tiffany Stratton's going to get up and powerbomb her. And she does. She gets up to do the powerbomb, but then they do that counter Annihilator, which I think is awesome, where the girl that's trying to powerbomb Nia Jax can't, and Nia Jax just jumps and sits on them doing the Annihilator. She does it, right? But Tiffany Stratton grabs the rope with her hand, which was pretty cool, Then eventually, what happens is Nia Jax leaves. She takes the title, pretending she's going to leave. This is all a ruse. She gets a chair, goes into the ring. Tiffany Stratton drop kicks the chair into her face. PME, 1, 2, 3. But an acceptable match for what it was. You know what I mean? The show sucked primarily for one reason, right? There's no John Cena. That's the only thing to look forward to. So there you have it, right? I will say this, though. The event, this episode of SmackDown, was full of matches. There were a lot of commercials, but there were also a lot of matches, all things considered, right? There were so many moments, for example, like we had the Sol Sakoa match, and then immediately after, we have the LA Knight JC Mateo match, right? The matches were long, so I don't like that. I don't think the fans do either. But obviously, the fans would prefer to this versus you have 3 matches and 2.5 hours of commercials. Imagine paying to go watch this and watch commercials, right? Like the hater, I haven't been to an episode of Raw or SmackDown. I've never been to a SmackDown, but I haven't been to a Raw since 2005 or some shit, since I was in high school, motherfucks, because I have no interest in going to a show where they show commercials, right? For those that have never been, at least back in the day, they would just black out the Titantron during the commercials and nothing would happen. This was during the time when matches didn't happen during commercials. So you just go there. Like there was like the episode of Raw that I went to was one where like Jeff Hardy comes out and a wrestler attacks him, right? And Jeff Hardy's just laid out on the ground during the whole commercial break. Then after the commercial break, it shows Jeff Hardy slowly recovering. And after that, Shawn Michaels comes out to give him advice. Jeff doesn't want to hear it. Sweet chin music, commercial break again. Jeff Hardy has to lay down there for another 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of shit you'd see. And nowadays, I have no interest in going to a pay-per-view either because we legitimately have the same setup in pay-per-views. We have commercials. I'm not here to watch commercials. When commercials come, I hit the skip button, cuts. So there you have it. Otherwise, I would say that this event was acceptable. Nothing happened. But, you know, sometimes that's going to be fine. Not every episode is going to move the storyline across. And you can make an argument that the storyline was slightly moved across by the R-Truth like segment, right? Personally, I don't agree, but who am I to say, right? These things did change. You know, other things have happened in recent weeks. John Cena's title reign, even though it's complete garbage, he is showing up. Like, he'll be wrestling at Saturday night's main event. So, like, in hindsight, when we look back at this, we're going to see this final John Cena run really as a farewell tour that did take off all the boxes, right? Yeah, he was a heel, but he wrestled a lot. Like, John Cena has wrestled more in like since WrestleMania than Cody Rhodes did like in the same time period last year, right? And obviously, John Cena has wrestled more and has appeared more than Cody Rhodes, you know, since WrestleMania than Cody Rhodes appeared at the same time last year, right? And obviously, it goes without saying that John Cena has done more for the WWE this year, like since WrestleMania, than Cody Rhodes has, given that Cody Rhodes ain't even there, cucks. So with that being said, I'm going to hit you guys with the Zen, and we're going to call it a day. Cuckolds, here you go.